This is Dr. Karen, and you are listening to the De Facto Leaders podcast, where I help pediatric therapists become better leaders so they can make a bigger impact with their services. On this show, I'll share up-to-date evidence-based practices, my own experiences, and guest interviews designed to help clinicians and educators feel more confident in the way that they serve their caseloads, so they can help school-age kids grow up to be successful, kind, well-adjusted people. Hey there, it's Dr. Karen, and welcome to episode 98 of the De Facto Leaders podcast. In this episode, I have special guest Valerie Doherty, who is a speech-language pathologist with over 35 years of experience and who is a published children's book author. I thought she would be a great guest with her years of experience in the publishing industry because I know that a lot of my listeners are always interested in ways that they can use their clinical skills to serve clients and also to find creative ways to advance in their career and develop additional income streams and just have a creative outlet. There are a lot of good options for publishers these days. There are sites like Etsy and Teachers Pay Teachers, but I wanted to have Valerie on because she has gone the traditional publishing route, and I thought she'd have some great insights into the whole publishing experience. So we get into all of the stages of the process in this interview, from coming up with the inspiration and the idea to navigating copyright and trademark and all of the legal things, as well as working with the publisher and an illustrator and thinking about marketing. So I know that you'll really enjoy this interview. If publishing a children's book or really any book is on your bucket list, I thought that she would be a great guest because I thought that the way that she is using her skills is a great example of creativity and leadership. Before we get going in the interview, I wanted to share a brand new guide that I just created. As I talk to more school leaders, it has become very apparent that many school-based mental health, behavior management, and social skills intervention neglect a set of essential skills, that skills being executive functioning. So this is obviously not the fault of the teachers or the therapists. Really, it's that the people who are supporting kids need accurate information and support in order to be able to support kids. So I aim to solve this problem with this free guide. So inside this free guide, you will learn how to improve students' social relationships and their ability to regulate their emotions, and how to do this when behavior management and social skills groups aren't working. I also talk about why talk therapy falls short for many kids with anxiety and what to do instead. I want to be clear that I am not making a blanket statement and saying that talk therapy is never appropriate, but I am saying when executive functioning issues are at play, talk therapy is not going to be an adequate solution. We need to have supports in context in order for that to be effective, and if we don't, those issues with anxiety that stem from executive functioning issues are not going to get better. In this guide, I also share how school clinicians can support mental health, resilience, and independence in kids, and how they can lead their teams in doing this, even if they aren't in a traditional leadership role. And I share in this guide what everyone's role is in supporting executive functioning, specifically in the school setting, but also across the board, because I do address how parents and students can play a role as well. So to download this free guide, you're going to want to go to drkarendudek-brannan.com/EF schools. Again, that's drkarendudek-brannan.com/EF schools. So now please enjoy this interview with SLP and published book author Val Doherty. All right, today I am joined by Val Doherty, speech language pathologist and book author. So thank you so much for being here with me today.
Thank you, Karen, for having me. I'm so delighted to be here.
So I thought we could just start off by having you tell us a little bit about yourself and where you've gone in your career, and then we can get into discussing the publishing world.
Okay, happy to do that. Well, I'm a longtime speech path. I practiced for a lot of years, and I did my undergrad work at the University of Nebraska in Lincoln, and then I did my graduate work at Champaign-Urbana. And I started out in rehab settings and did some public health as well, and had the privilege and opportunity to work with a wide variety of patients in those settings. And then I went into the schools where I had a long time experiences across a number of settings. And then I went into administration, and because of my own professional interest in language and literacy, I did continue some educational work with getting additional certifications in both learning disabilities, general ed, birth to grade 3, and administration as well.
Great. So obviously, one of the things that we wanted to talk about today is that you are a published author. So when did you start doing that, and what inspired you to start doing that kind of work?
Well, I self-published a first book back in 2011. And because of my professional interest in language and literacy, I really wanted to do some work in that. And I, like I mentioned, attended the University of Nebraska in Lincoln. And so I wrote a football book. And that is called Husker Game Day. And I had approached a publishing company that was very well versed in how to acquire trademarks and licensing agreements with the university. And I didn't know much about that, but they certainly did and guided me down that path in the right direction. And then it was one of the initiatives of that university that is early childhood as well. And so it seemed to be a perfect marriage of those interests with the language and literacy, the school, and my own, I'm a football fan as well. So it worked out, and it was a lot of fun. And the university has been terrific to me. I had a couple signings, and then the Alumni Association had asked about, acquiring some of those books for, I believe they sent them out to some young kids that were in a group with parents as well. So it was a terrific first experience.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because a lot of the SLPs now, if they want to publish a children's book or create resources, they'll do something like Teachers Pay Teachers, and that's great as well. It's an easy way to get your work out there. But what made you want to pursue kind of the traditional route?
Well, I looked at all of those pieces together, and I had done some background information, and there certainly are a lot of paths to publishing, and that is certainly true. One can self-publish now, and even more so, I think, than those 12 years ago or whatever it was. There are certainly more options that one can go traditional. There's hybrid situations. I'm in a current situation with the most recent books where I had hired an illustrator already, and then she, as we worked together, suggested another company. But there are such a number of different paths that people can go right now, including but not limited to self and as well as traditional.
Yeah. Well, and I think for me, as navigating this world as well, that a lot of times people go the electronic route because then you don't have to think about physical products and actually shipping, and like you said, an illustrator that's actually going to make a paper book. So it seems a little bit easier to just put something online via PDF, but definitely takes more work when you're thinking about a physical book. But it's so needed. I mean, kids need something they can physically hold in their hands and look at.
Right. And we have, don't we, so much research out there, and how our own field, we're so much involved now with the literacy piece, I think. So it's, I did some practice in early intervention too. And so all those things with the tangible product with the little ones during those EI visits too, they, get the whole feel of a book and the left-right progression and all the things that books can offer our very young patients and clients and our own families.
Mm-hmm. So how many books have you written up until this point?
Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, I guess. It's 6.
Great.
Yeah. So the second one I did, I'd done a little study on, kids that don't particularly like reading, and it's a bit of a struggle for them. So on the second one, I continued that sports theme, and I had, because I grew up in the Midwest and I had attended the College World Series in Omaha as well, I decided to write that second one about the College World Series. So that was really nonfiction, and I wanted to see how that might go. And the whole event, I was so taken by that whole event that I did that one about the baseball. And, I thought it might have appeal to, a different set of kids, a little bit older. And so that one was fun too. So that was the same kind of situation, though. I had to have some assistance with licensing and trademarks with the NCAA and the use of the logo and the venue. And, all of that was supported by the company that I had mentioned before that knew how to navigate the licensing and trademark agreement. So I simply didn't have any knowledge at all. I knew that, if I said I wanted to, since we live in Illinois and I'm a big Bears fan, if I said, oh, gee, I guess I'll do a Bears book today, you really can't go ahead and do that without permission to the right people, So that, like I said, it was that one company that really knew how to do that. And I believe the owner was an attorney and had a lot of knowledge about all of that for both those beginning books. So, if anybody is thinking about that, those are the things that one has to know about legally. And as I've gone down this path a little bit more, and I continue to take more writing classes too. So, that you want to improve in the craft, but, the legal things that you may or may not know about or think about, it's something to pursue if you ever want to use specific names or companies or sports teams or any of that. I just did not have that background or knowledge base.
Yeah, that is something that I see where it's confusing. And especially when I see things being shared online, and, I can think back to, being in the schools and people are photocopying and sharing things, and we don't come from the background of understanding intellectual property and the legal side of things for that specifically. Yes, we get the compliance side of healthcare, but not necessarily business, marketing, trademark, all of those things. So, yeah.
That is true. And I just recently, because I currently have a contract for the books that I'm most recently published with a different company now. I had a contract, signed a contract with them. So, that you have to have some kind of knowledge of before you go signing, and, how one can then use certain things, or, all those things that you're right. You don't know much about intellectual property, but that you learn after you do something. And, that has happened. So I belong to an organization now, an Authors Guild, that in case any of your listeners ever go down that path or want some legal expertise for those individuals that are particularly skilled in intellectual property, that has been very helpful to me to be a member of that organization as well, the Authors Guild.
The Authors Guild. So what are the things, obviously we won't this is a very involved topic, which requires expertise and lawyers and all kinds of people who can advise you in getting those contracts and navigating those agreements. But if we could kind of go down a list of things that you want to think about and ask those professionals. So we have things like you mentioned that. So if you wanted to do a book about the Chicago Bears, that's their intellectual property. You have to get permission for that. What other things came up for you that you maybe didn't realize, or were just things that you had to think about from, because we have the using other people's intellectual property, but then also protecting your own intellectual property, both of those two things. What came up for you with those types of things?
Well, I'll start with the first book because that was my school, and I knew that I would need permission for, the helmets, the uniforms, and I can't draw, so there was an illustrator. But this company that did that first book, those first two books that involved so many of those licensing and trademarks things, they knew how to do that. They approached the institutions and talked about that and got the permission. So that was good. And then if one would have used any songs or, their fight songs, which I didn't, but that would be also something else. If you used anybody's fight song or lyrics from that were already protected and written by somebody else, that would be another layer. So I didn't, those were just the images. And so they connected on that particular project, that first book, Husker Game Day, they connected me with a couple different illustrators, showed me their portfolios, and what kind of images do you want, and do you want it more cartoon like, and honestly, I just hadn't thought about all of that. So I learned so much from the illustrators because they too, of course, have a variety of styles. And it was, do you want cartoon characters or do you want more lifelike people? And we went with the more lifelike on both those first books. But those kinds of things that, and what color combinations? Well, the color combinations weren't so much an issue because you knew what the uniforms were like, but the venue too, in terms of the logos, there's a block in, and then at the first, there was a reprint on this book, which the first one was, I don't quite remember the dates, but it's, the Huskers. And then there was a change on the logo for the second print run. So one had to go through the approval and again, the process of that, because the logo had slightly changed. So all those things with the slight change, and there's fair use, which I'm learning now. If any of your listeners would ever think about joining certain organizations, I belong to a couple, Society of Children Book Writers and Illustrators, in addition to the Authors Guild, where they have all these ongoing seminars about, all these topics beyond the contracts, if you ever, have contracts. But it's, use of certain things, use of, like I mentioned, the lyrics or logos or any of that they can help you navigate those. So, no one wants to get in trouble with anybody. Right? So, you have to be careful on how, whether you use anything in a book or not, poetry, somebody else's work, can you, you'd have, permission, of course, to include that in a text.
So what do you do? So let's say that you've gone through all of that and you've gotten all your permissions and everything, and you have your book, and now you've created something. And so now you have to, protect your own intellectual property. What kinds of things do you need to think about there when you are working on licensing agreements or selling?
Yeah, you have to you have to copyright those books, so inside, I didn't do any of that work, by the way. They did, the permissions for me. They did the copyrights, and they have inside, of course, the messages are all rights reserved, and university has trademarks and licensing agreements that are protected by the University of Nebraska, and all that's inside. And that company took care of all that,
The one that,
including including the copyrights. I didn't do any of that. I didn't apply for copyrights, but they did. And so if you self-publish, like some people do now, many people do, they take care of that themselves, for a copyright. And because I haven't done it myself, I haven't, I don't know the cost of that, but
yeah.
you apply for those copyrights. And these second books, which is different because that's with a company in England. So this is called, the next ones are published through a company called Blossom Spring. And Big City Dance was the third book I did. And like I mentioned, I had found an illustrator, and I wasn't quite sure whether I was going to do the work myself or, hunt down somebody else. But Brenda Higgins is her name, and I had seen her portfolio, and frankly, I don't even remember where I saw it. I think I saw her online, her work, and she had a style of kind of whimsical, and I thought that's what I'd written. I'd already written the text. So I thought, yeah, that looks really what I'm thinking. And then I knew that Brenda could do people as well. So she had a very complete portfolio, and we connected. Brenda lives in Spain, but hails from Ireland. So, we chatted online, and I had seen her website. And then she said, "What do you think about working with Blossom Spring?" And so I had submitted the text to her, and we'd given a sample of the illustrations, and they took that. But inside these books, the copyright is from England for those books, the last. So that's a little bit different, but it reads in accordance under copyright designs and patents and by British Library cataloging and publication. And it goes on and on, but it's in the beginnings of the book. So I didn't do any of those either. They did, so it's protected a little bit differently under that, and reads a little bit differently than copyright is in the US.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So how it worked for you is that you, on the front end, as the author, worked with somebody to make sure that you weren't violating anybody else's copyrights or intellectual property. And then you worked with the publisher. And then once you worked with the publishing company, they're the ones that took care of protecting the property from there. Whereas if you were self-publishing, you would just take that last step and have to make sure that you sought legal advice to do that on your end.
That's right. Yep, that's right. Everybody's a little bit different. And, with traditional paths on what they call the big fives, and who would that be? Like Penguin Random House, or, the really big companies. And they call them the big five right off of my top of my head. I can't name all of them. But with that said, that many of those, if you have people on your show that want to publish, those big companies require agents many times. So, in order to get into those big houses, you need an agent. So literary agents may be looking for some very unique pieces of writing. It doesn't mean your writing is not good. It means they may not be seeking that kind, but a lot of them require agents. Some, not all, have what they call unsolicited submissions, where you don't need an agent. So again, I belong to quite a few of these groups that have helped me learn so much about that. And then I'm in, ongoing classes like continuing ed for speech paths.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Continuing writers.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
It
the business side and the legal side is just, it's a whole other world and a big learning curve, I found.
yeah, right. It's true. And I just started out, I just put pen to paper one day. I thought, I'll just goof around here. And
Yeah.
and then, I don't illustrate. Many talented folks are able to do that, both write and illustrate, and I'm not able to do that. So the other piece of working with illustrators and designers is a whole nother thing as well.
I'm curious, when you were in your writers groups, what kinds of advice did you get for approaching publishers?
I started off, and because we live in the Midwest and we're relatively close to Iowa City, when I got past this first one, I thought I should keep trying to improve in craft. So I went to this writers festival, Iowa Summer Writers Festival, for several years now. And at the pandemic, of course, it wasn't in person anymore, but they have online. So they have a very specific technique there where they, you come in with pieces of work. There are a lot of writers there. They call it a workshop, and if people have that situation where they have groups in their own community, I haven't been able to find that here, where I have a consistent group along with beta readers to help me with all that. So I haven't been able to find that. I'm sure it exists somewhere, but I haven't found it. And so anyway, back to the workshop, they really were so very instrumental and kind at giving feedback, how to improve craft. So, that topic came up about then how might one approach, you revise, you write first drafts, and you know yourself and your own work on, dissertations, how rigorous that can be, writes and revisions and, beta readers, or, on your own academic work, how that can go. But they talked about different possibilities. And if you're walking in cold and you really don't have any background knowledge, which I didn't in the very beginning, they said, oh, you can go to this, you can go to this. These are groups that you might want to consider belonging to. And my first class in Iowa, a summer workshop, it was a gal who I think she was a Caldecott winner. It was kind of big, along with her daughter, who was a poet laureate, taught this kids group. And, they were very patient with all of us because none of us had published at the time. No, I can't quite remember sequence of events then. I guess I had done Husker game day, but at any rate, they were talking about different ways and groups that you could, find, and how to go in the next step. You write the manuscript, you get good editors, it might go through multiple revisions, and then you try to approach, whichever way you want to go. At the time, it maybe wasn't as much self-publishing going on, but I just think it's really exploded right now, where
it definitely has.
Yeah, it's exploded. And, particular people that are younger than I am have such great sophistication at doing format and design. And, I wasn't, didn't grow up with that. Whereas, the younger folks have had all that opportunity to learn that. And I know some people that are doing that beautifully, but I don't think I don't have the skill set to do that. And, Brenda and I were laughing. We did this one called Wonderful Things, and it really is for birth. I think that was the fourth one. But Wonderful Things, we wanted to do something for the babies. And, so it's real low text, and she really did a beautiful job on it, but it had quite a few revisions, both on my part and hers. But at any rate, I just I have a great deal of respect for the illustrators and the designers who've helped with the covers as well, because it just really is not something I have the greatest eye for, and they're really trained with it. They, oh, do you want this color? And I'm like, oh, I
Yeah,
don't
I
know.
have the hardest time.
About the font beats me. I mean,
Yeah.
there's some, right. I mean, they're the designers on the covers too. What do you think about this? And they really opened my eyes to so many things that I haven't thought of, because I was so focused on the text. And it just really has. I've learned a lot in over a decade is what I can say, but it's ongoing, which makes it fresh and interesting, because you keep learning all the time.
Yeah, I mean, with the publishing, if you're going to write a book for young children, it's really essential that you have the illustrating down and that you have good quality visualization and all of that. So really, when you're thinking about approaching a publisher, there's all these other steps of that you need to have your illustrator and so you approached an editor before you went to a publisher, and then you have to think about how you're going to pitch the publisher and approach them and talk about your book before they even read it. I mean, there's probably a process, right?
There is. And like when we did Big City Dance, I had wanted to do something about movement, because books are that. When I went back for early childhood curriculum, Karen, I just learned so much about how best practice should be, with little kids. So, and I knew about how our own field with rhyme and rhythm and repetition can support literacy. So when I did Big City Dance, I like to dance myself. So I thought, okay, I'll just write this text about these mice that are dancing. And there's some animals in it. And I have to tell you, after that book, and again, it's done in rhyme and rhythm, and it really was another layer with rhyme and rhythm, because if you don't get it quite right, it sounds clunky and weird, with rhyme. And so that went through multiple revisions too. It's the syllable count and all of that. And then, we talked about all the vocabulary in it that little kids may or may not know. There's salsa in it and merengue, which is okay. You can expose kids to new and interesting words. And we wanted to put something in it so we could incorporate movement with little kids. So we put a dance in it at the end with power verbs. So, there were all those kind of layers. And when I first did it, I had written it. And then Brenda, I was already had a contract drawn up with Brenda, the illustrator, after I saw her portfolio. And she was the one that said to me, hey, listen, maybe you'd like to approach Blossom Spring. She would already had a relationship with them in some manner. I don't know if she did contract work and I thought, okay.
Yeah.
So I did, and that's how that one went. So I didn't search very hard. I looked at their submission requirements. Every publisher will have submission requirements, and you can look at their website. And if you want to submit to them, they may say, we'll take unsolicited submissions, which is no agent, or they'll say you must have an agent. So, if you go approaching one of those companies that require an agent, then there's another step. You have to go find an agent. And those agents are very busy, and, they too have very specific requirements that they may be looking for specific things that may or may not be a match with your own work. So, there are, this one wasn't so hard because Brenda had already worked with them, out in England. So
Mhm.
that's the way it went on this one. So, I'm working on some stuff now, and they've been kind. And, I've had multiple manuscripts with Brenda. We've worked on several now. I had a different illustrator for the first two books, and Tiffany, she was great too. I didn't find her, but with Brenda, I had found her. So there's all different ways that it can go, and
Yeah.
it certainly is different for everybody. If you start talking to them, oh, how'd you get that done?
Yeah,
But
well,
anyway,
and I think leveraging those relationships too, because I think if you are approaching an agent or a publisher or somebody who, if they're getting a lot of submissions, they might be getting a lot of good submissions. I think it's almost like when people are looking at resumes and human resources where they could be getting a lot of qualified candidates, and it's hard to sift through all of those things. And if you can get your name put to the top of the pile, or if there's some familiarity there, then that it's probably more likely that you'll get your manuscript read, or that you'll get some eyes on your work, and that you'll get to move on to the next step. I wanted to take a quick break here and mention something specific that you can do to advocate for your students as well as take on a leadership role on your IEP team. If you are a related service provider, you likely have students who appear to be disengaged, not motivated, who tend to struggle to get their assignments completed both in class and with homework, and often avoid some of the most challenging tasks that they need to do in order to actually learn new skills and get more confident. So many times these issues are related to executive functioning. Oftentimes these students get labeled as lazy or defiant, but really it stems from a much deeper issue. There's a lot of anxiety there because they are not sure how to visualize the steps that they need to do in order to complete tasks. And this comes across as behavior issues, it causes issues with social relationships, and it can have a huge impact on students' self esteem and mental health. So many times, schools think that they need to do all kinds of positive reinforcement, behavior management, talk therapy. Some of those things can be appropriate in certain situations, but if we want students to be more resilient and build their executive functioning skills, we have to actually teach them executive functioning skills. And everyone who interacts with kids on a daily basis plays a critical role in this process. That's why I've created a free executive functioning implementation guide to outline everyone's role in this process. This includes the professionals' roles in the school setting, as well as what students and parents can do. So if you are a related service provider and you want to help your team get on the right track so that you can support your caseload, definitely check out my executive functioning guide. To download that guide, you're going to want to go to drkarendudek-brannan.com/EF schools.
well, it certainly is true. It's good to have really nice relationships with editors, and it's with the illustrators and the designers, because it's makes the work a lot easier. And they certainly bring it to they brought it to my attention anyway, about color and layout and all of it. I just and I have to say to them, thanks for asking me, but I must rely on your expertise, because I don't know as much
Mm-hmm.
about, font and, you know, uh, how this lines up. What you do want to make sure on the design, and, we all looked at it, editors, designers, illustrators, we all look at it hundreds of times. You're almost sick of reading it because you're
Yeah.
reading it so much, and then you get so close to it yourself. For me, I couldn't see the mistakes, so you have to hire good editors, to look at it again, and they certainly can help elevate a work. So, currently I've got something with an editor right now, and it's, I don't know, it's on its fifth revision or something,
Mm-hmm. So
you
that's a
just get,
normal
yeah,
normal
yeah,
part of the
right.
process.
Yeah, it is, as you know too. So you get too close to it, you can't see it yourself, and they'll say this doesn't move as quickly, or this isn't clear, or do you think a kindergartner would know this word, or this needs, and that's developmental at it, and then there's all the punctuation, the periods, which is another piece of it. So I think that, what do they say, the sweet spot for picture books is under 1,000, and ideally less is more, maybe 750 words. So you're
That's
packing a
interesting.
lot of story. I've read different things. They're talking about how they're becoming shorter now, picture book manuscripts, but how to pack in a story in not many words. So it's too long here, cut this word. This
How,
isn't
why is
clear.
it? I wonder why it's getting shorter, and if that's a good thing.
And I think I just got some feedback today, and she said we don't need this, I don't think. And at the beginning, I'm like, and it's hard for me sometimes to think about setting up the scene, how much, and I know the illustrators can do that through the pictures. Maybe I don't need that to say so much
Hmm.
with, if they can relay it through the pictures. So, it is a beautiful gift to be able to draw and write yourself. But I thought, oh, shouldn't I give more detail there to set the scene, But, I'll let it sit. And when I get feedback from an editor, I really let it sit 2 or 3 days until I tackle it again, because I sort of have to noodle about what she said to me, and,
Yeah.
but yeah, I'm not sure, I mean, do we think attention spans are getting shorter?
Yeah, that's
I
kind
don't
of
know.
where I was going. So I had just a couple questions or points of clarity. And
Sure.
so beta readers, obviously, so that would be more, it's test readers, so more of a test audience reader. And then the editor is a professional who has trained experience in editing. How often do those editors of children's books, I mean, do they have a marketing background and they know market trends? Do they have background in child development? How do they know what to tell you? How do they know how to advise you?
I'm gonna say this because anybody that's seeking an editor for the first time, I've learned some things through trial and error here. Like, I've gone with a company now, which I really like, and I've had several picture book editors, which they've all had come to, they all have their own skill set. But when somebody says to me, I love children's picture books, and they say that word, I had somebody else, but I think middle grade was really her love affair, and I probably should maybe not have sent it to her, because she had ideas and that was great, but I think middle grade was her really love affair. So this current editor I've had, and there's a company that I've gone with, and you can get 2 or 3 quotes and look at editors' backgrounds, and
Mm-hmm.
that's been particularly helpful. But in answer to your question, this current one has had years of experience with picture books, and I think she has worked with a major publishing company, and I could read her bio on her background, and you can get different quotes from them. But it took me a while to find this place, but they gave me what do you want? Do you want just a developmental edit, or do you want proofreading? And proofreading is really, later down the road. It's just the
Yeah.
commas and the periods, but it wasn't what I wanted. So I looked at 2 or 3 of them and their backgrounds, and some of them have MFAs,
Okay.
um, you know, degrees in fiction writing, and I think hers might be that, but also the years of experience working with a major publishing house.
Yeah. There's a lot of things to think about there because they have to think about what is going to sell and what do people want. But I think that, we as clinicians, we're thinking ethically and, what's evidence based. And yes, obviously picture books are great for kids, but we also want them to learn to look at the print symbols, and we want to expand their vocabulary. And so we come from a different mindset. That's just really interesting how I'm sure that they start to learn a lot of that on the job, just like you might be learning on the job some of the things that she knows, or that they know as far as the publishing world. It's interesting. A
It is.
lot of questions to ask.
It is. And, it's the creative side, where I think for us, especially if we spend a lot of time in the schools, that, we have been around those school book fairs, and know what the kids are being attracted to it, and all of that. And those educational publishers may be different than, more than the literary piece. They're beautiful, all the beautiful pictures and all the themes and motifs. But for kids that are struggling readers, and that's where I'm coming from. I'm thinking, that's why it started out that way for me with the late talkers. When I'd go into sessions, as I know many of us do, we want to select text that elicits certain things, and that we can use those strategies in our own clinical backgrounds, right? That we know certain books will do that. And then I added, rhyme and rhythm, because I know it benefits kids, right? And I wanted to make it funny, and I wanted to get up and move, and I wanted to bring in verbs that I thought they'd know, and pair the actions, and so yes, clinical versus the creative. And there's nothing wrong with those beautiful literary books, but I'm not writing like that myself, so then you have to find the matchup of who the editor is and who might be a good fit with the work, and then the publisher who might be a good fit with the work. So yeah, it certainly is a lot to learn.
Well, and if you don't know how to handle the marketing piece and the creative piece and how to tell an engaging story, people aren't going to read your book. They're not going to buy it. So the benefit of your clinical knowledge doesn't ever really get into the hands of people who need it. I mean, I think we need people who can help us learn those skills, and we need to take ownership of that as a profession, to just make sure that we can use our skills. So we've kind of talked through, we talked through the initial process. So let's say that we're at the stage where we've got the book published. Now we're at the stage where we want to sell the book. What kinds of things did you learn at that phase?
I might do some things differently with that. I'm not sure. Would I hire a publicist? I don't know. For the next one, I'm not quite sure. But now, this year, particularly since the pandemic, I had a book come out last year. This Big City Dance is 1 in 3. It's the first one of a 3-book series with the same characters. So the last one came out last year. So I've, got it on Amazon. The announcement came out from Blossom that it was coming. It was coming. I had some following from the previous ones. And then, I am now in some groups, marketing groups, how to market these things. If I had it to do over again, I'd probably do some things differently. I've purchased some ads on a company that sends out to educators and libraries. Now I also have a group that it's a student-led initiative. It's called Babies with Books, and they have a readathon with all these hospitals. And it's, I've become acquainted with them for wonderful things where, I've done some book giveaways. We periodically do book giveaways. I've done some podcasts with some people to get the word out there. So there's ads, there's podcasts, there's interviews, there's local papers, you might want to approach your own libraries, practices. And it's the marketing really, I find, is, well, it's rigorous, the
Yeah.
marketing
And
is
it's ongoing.
it's ongoing, and it's rigorous. So I really think there's targeted marketing that can help. I just keep talking about the books. When I meet
Yeah.
people, I go to workshops, and then but I do love the writing, so it's not like I stop. I keep marketing, but I've got 2 and 3 manuscripts on the burner right now. So for me, people have asked me that. For me, the writing is joyful. It's not drudgery. It's fun for me. And I do not only picture books, but I'm dabbling in what flash fiction. And I don't know if, do you know about National Novel Writing Month? Do you know this term NaNoWriMo at all?
I'm not familiar with that.
Well, I started a novel. It's been on my radar to do it. I love the picture books, but I just thought, shoot, I'll just try it this year.
Yeah.
You
Why
know,
not?
yeah, it's and I'm crazy about fiction. So, I've always liked to read myself, and the goal there, you don't have to do it. Nobody's, standing over and you must write every day, but the goal on that National Novel Writing Month is 50,000 words in the month of November. So
That sounds doable. I mean,
yeah,
if you really had some good
I didn't get it done, but and I didn't get it done because I think for me, I'm a planner. I should have outlined and planned it out like 6 months. The other people, they call themselves, I'm just going to write it. I'm going to be a pantser, fly by the seat of my pants and just write it. I don't know how
I don't
people
know
do
about that.
I don't know how people do that. I even have characters in my head before I start writing the 750 or less, children's manuscript. I start with characters is what I do. I don't know if other people do something quite different. They might have a story in their head, but usually I start with characters and then move on out. Except I learned that later for Husker Game Day, it was just the event of a game day. I went through that, and then the nonfiction with the series book, but I've sort of changed it now. I really start with the characters. And anyway, I don't know how, I've heard somebody say that I'm just going to market this book, but it's not how that goes for me. I just keep writing them, I just bang out a manuscript and I never stop. So the marketing is ongoing, and the marketing is probably always going to be in there. I'm on Goodreads. People can follow people on Goodreads, and I'm on Amazon. People can, look at it there. And I'm in, some groups, LinkedIn, and I've got the website. And you try all these different things on the marketing. You just keep going on all of that and learn some new things through the individuals that surround you in all these different groups.
Yeah. And they help you through, where do you actually put your book? Like, do you put it, is it at Barnes and Noble? Is it at Amazon, or where to actually go to purchase your book?
That's right. And, on that, somebody told me once in that first one, Husker Game Day, they'd seen it at Costco once. And I'm like, huh.
Well, and does the publishing company take care of some of that if you do work with a publisher?
Yeah, they do, but they, and most of them, have, they want the authors, of course, to be involved with the marketing as well.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, they are going to say, oh, your job's done. They want you to be involved. So there's a speech path group, and maybe some of your listeners know it already. Let's see if I get the name right. It's Speech Paths by Day, Authors by Night.
I don't know that one.
Yeah, Speech Paths by Day, Authors by Night. And they're a face, they're on social media, Facebook. And so I've become acquainted with several of them. And of course, we're talking about getting together and doing a summit soon, and, about all these things, paths to publishing. So, everybody says the same thing about the marketing, that it becomes what are you doing? I'm doing this. How about you? And, it just is, uh, it's whether you like it or not, it's part of the package. So
That's been
it's,
my experience with doing online professional development as well, that you think, oh, it's going to be about the course and the mentoring, and I end up spending a lot of time on the marketing piece of just, spreading the word and getting more people in. That the writing process, once it's done, it's there, and then a lot of it goes to spreading the word about what you have.
right. It's true. And, there is a lot of it by word of mouth,
Mm-hmm.
it is. And, and certainly, I would like out of this group for us to support one another and learn from each other. And, that's what we're hoping to do. And I've made some very nice contacts there. And, we all talk about it. Do you want to do you want to generate more work by having to do a newsletter, or, we talk about it. But I've also taken courses now with some marketing people that have given me, again, another lens through the business side of it, because the creative piece is joyful and it's fun and all of that, but it's the reality. If you want to increase a revenue stream through writing, or a side hustle, or whatever one
Mm-hmm.
calls it, it remains part of the package that you have to market the books.
Well, and I can just say from my own experience that you can use that same creative process in your marketing, because all you're doing is there's writing, there's storytelling. I mean, I'm writing marketing emails, or people are writing social media posts, or, podcast interviews. There's all sorts of
Yeah,
different formats that you can use to spread awareness of your actual paid products that you offer. So you can still take that creative process and use it in your marketing. It doesn't have to necessarily stop with the actual, publishing of your book.
it's true. That is true. And things, and how about the media piece? It's just
Oh yeah.
right. It's just so much learning on that too, and reels and all of
Yeah. It's a lot to
TikTok,
keep up with.
right? TikTok and you
Yeah,
know,
that's Reels and TikTok are the big ones, and YouTube Shorts apparently. I haven't gotten into that one yet, but I've been looking into TikTok and Reels.
I
I haven't
know.
quite got into the trending sounds. I hear from a couple marketing experts that you don't necessarily have to dance around to pop music and point at the words on your screen. All I do when I do TikToks and Reels is I just talk about something for 2 or 3 minutes and stick it on there. I'm not
Yeah,
dancing around.
I know, right? And there's a certain um I don't know, I mean, you have to find your own comfort level. I'm
Yeah.
working my way up there.
Yeah. I don't know. I do think that some things are just trending. It is good to get on a trend if you can grow a following. And I think for authors, TikTok definitely has some potential because of the way that the platform is right now. You can get a lot of eyes on your stuff from just views and not necessarily followers, and it's short and it's visual. So if you have a picture book, that is something that's really easy to demonstrate on a platform like TikTok or Instagram, or, well, honestly, even Facebook. So
Right.
anything that has video.
Yes, yes, it's true. But and all of it is takes time. All of it
Yeah.
takes time, and how to carve out that time. And I just, what I learned from that whole experience in November, that National Novel Writing Month, and I want to finish it, I do. That it really is power in practice. You
Oh
just,
yeah, for
right,
sure.
sit down and do it, even
Mhm.
and I was a little crazy with the word count when I first started. And then I thought, you know what? I'm just going to sit down and write. And if it feels like a natural stopping point, then I wrote, I wrote for the day. So I just didn't go crazy with it. And I thought, well, I did it. I wrote something every day. I didn't finish a novel, but that's okay. I did
Yeah.
it.
I think
So
that showing up to do the practice is part of the process.
I think when people ask, because a lot of people, it's funny because when I did clinical supervision, I just learned so much from the students as well. And they would say, what if I don't like this field? What if I don't want to do it forever? And I said, there are other things that one can do to balance it out. If you think you want to change in setting, you could do that. Or if you think you want to publish, you could do that. So, or if you think you want to do product development, or you think you want to go with a company to sell, I think there are things that one can step away from that. But I think that you can always use those skills that you're learning now. It's never lost, and that you can extend it, into whatever that might be.
Yeah, I think with a field like a speech pathology or any of the other clinical fields, social work, psychology, counseling, all of that, you have a very specific job in mind, even though there's a broad scope with all of those things. And with other fields like marketing, communications, it's more of an expectation that there's this broad way that you're going to apply those skills and you're going to learn it on the job, just because that's the nature of the field. And so, you think, why can't we think about our skills in the same way as those other fields, even though we do have something very specific we can do with our degree?
That's right. I agree with that wholeheartedly.
So
Look
this,
at you.
oh, sorry, go ahead.
Look at you. You've done all these interesting things.
Yeah, and I'm venturing out into some other directions currently. There's I'll have more updates on that probably in the coming months. But yeah, I don't know. I think I just, what, I think some people do get into a job and it's really their sweet spot and they like to stay there. But then some people like to do something for, 5 years and then move on to the next thing, or even just a couple years. And in the corporate world, that's just what you do. It's pretty common to move around from one department to another. And we don't see that as much in clinical fields. And it's really interesting how we think of it as, I don't know, almost a bad thing or thing that people don't do. And I think, why not? Maybe it's okay to switch around and see what you like and just get different experiences to find out what works for you.
I think so too. I would agree with that.
So this is a good place to wrap up. Where can people go to learn more about how to connect with you or some of the resources that you've mentioned so far in this interview?
Yeah. The books are on Amazon. You can visit Valerie Doherty author.com. That's the website. And I'm on Goodreads. You can find LinkedIn. I'm over there. Although I do post a lot on Facebook too, because people are interested in the process, some of the things that we've talked about now.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's pretty much on the social media piece. I said Goodreads, right? Yeah, you can
And we can link to
follow
all
me
these
there.
things. I can.
Yeah, and you can, leave reviews. Occasionally, the good news is we give book giveaways. Sometimes I just had one, but we talk about that on. I talk about things quite a bit on Facebook. I don't post every day, but frequently I do, and
Yeah.
on the website. And things are always coming up, and we are planning this, and I'll mention it. I don't have all the details to give you today, Karen, but we are going to do that summit. And,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
if listeners are interested, there are a lot of speech paths, and I've become acquainted with them simply by, joining that group, or is that speech paths by day, authors by night.
Okay.
And
And I can link to that too.
Yeah, and a lot of those individuals, it's not what I did, but some of those, and we're going to do this summit with a little more diving deeply into this content about my path certainly isn't the same as others. Some of those
Yeah.
have done Kickstarters, some are traditionally published. We're going to try to get uh, an array of people on that so they can just speak to that,
Mhm.
and things that they've experienced, which have been certainly different than mine, and why they started to write, and what they're doing now, and how maybe we can support each other. But we're planning that in the spring, and I can get back to that, and I'll post it as well. But I so appreciate this time with you. This has been great.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing this. And so for the summit, it's for people who are interested in publishing all kinds of different speakers on the subject, and they can go learn about that in the Facebook group that we'll link to. And if you do have a specific link to that summit, once you know the details, I can always update the show
Okay.
notes after the
Okay.
fact. But
That'll be
yeah,
great.
this has been great, and thank you so much for being here with me today.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. It's just been grand and delightful to talk to you. Thank you.
Before I wrap up this episode, I wanted to remind you to check the show notes for all of the links to the resources that were mentioned in this interview, including some of the organizations that you can go to for help with the publishing process and the Facebook group that was mentioned. There is going to be a summit for publishers in the spring of 2023. And so if you are interested in the publishing world, I highly recommend joining that Facebook group. And I do believe that this is an event that happens a couple times a year. So if you were to listen to this episode after the spring of 2023, then it's still definitely worth getting in that group and seeing what kind of resources they're sharing. Also, don't forget to check out the Executive Functioning Implementation Guide that I mentioned several times in this episode. If you are a related service provider and you want to know how you can support your students' mental health and help them to learn the skills that they need to be resilient and adaptable, especially if you have students who are bright and capable but are being labeled as lazy or procrastinators or defiant, and you know that they're capable of much more. Definitely check out that implementation guide. It can be helpful not just for those students, but for all of the students in the student body. So to check out that guide, you're going to want to go to drkarendudek-brannan.com/EF schools. I also wanted to mention that I am always looking for amazing guests who are showing some form of leadership when it comes to supporting kids, whether it be in a clinical role or whether it be in their community. So if you have a great idea for a guest, or if you would like to be a guest on this show, please email me at talktome@drkarenspeech.com. And if you would like me to be a guest on your show, or if you would like me to present to your organization, you can email me at talktome@drkarenspeech.com as well. Thank you so much for listening, and I will see you in the next episode.